Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of PolyRamblez. Now, this one is probably going to be much shorter than the previous ones because I was talking about a lot of drama and things like that. So there was a lot to say there. But this one is going to be focused on the topic of envy and jealousy, which is something that I've really grown a lot of interest in recently. And I feel like a lot of things in my life kind of make me think about it a lot and question it and want to tackle the idea of it. So we're just going to be exploring that a little bit. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. This is definitely a topic I would love to revisit in the future. So I'm going to call this like volume one of this topic. But there's a lot of topics that I want to address, but I know like in the future I would like to come back to it and like revisit it and like change my approach or change the way I think about it and see if like there's been growth there. Cause I definitely feel like there's going to be a lot of growth with this topic for me. But, let's get started. There's no reason to, delay it any longer. But yeah, I would like to first start off and say that, I think it's really important to mention that emotions like envy and jealousy are normal. I feel like a lot of people out there, like they tell themselves that there are some bad emotions and then there are good emotions. And I think it's really not helpful to think of any emotion as bad, like even anger, like which is something I would love to get to later. I have many ideas for that as well, but no, we're focusing on envy and jealousy this time. But I do feel like thinking of some emotions as bad emotions is really unhelpful. Everyone at some point in time in their life feels jealous or envious. It's just a part of being human. As a human, you're going to experience a whole array of emotions, and sometimes you just don't have control over that. And I think that what really matters is what you do when you feel those emotions, when you feel those feelings. How intense are they, and do they control you and make you do things that you aren't proud of? All that matters in my mind is how you act at the end of the day. So, what will your actions and your choices be as a result of feeling jealous or envy? That is what defines you, your actions. So, there's nothing wrong with feeling emotions, but what is important is how we act. And I think that's a really important first step to get past before we continue with the rest of the topic. Now, something I really love to do is define words. I just really love words and definitions. So, like, I really want to have a definition of envy and jealousy that we can easily work with and so we're all be on the same page of what things mean. Maybe this is the philosopher in me. I was actually reading a book recently where it's a book about a scientist, and the scientist is talking about how it's just not useful to make a big deal about how you want to define words. It's kind of like just a waste of time, and in some ways it's not possible. And I thought that was an interesting argument, and I would definitely like to revisit that thought in the future. But for me, defining words is like a big part of my process. When I studied philosophy in college, I definitely did a lot of defining words to make sure that no matter who's reading this, we're all on the same page of how this word is understood. You might have a different definition, but when you're reading my work, this is the definition that we're working with here. And I don't know, I think that's a really important thing to do. So that's what I plan to do here. So envy. We'll start with envy first. So the definition I have for envy is a feeling of discontented or resentful longing aroused by someone else's possessions, qualities, or luck. And I like to think of it with examples because I think examples really helps portray the feeling. So it's almost like you see someone who's very talented and you're like, man, I wish I had that talent. Or I wish I had a girlfriend or boyfriend or partner like that person does. And I want that. That would be really cool if I had that. That's like kind of examples and ways to visualize envy. And as I define these, I want to, bring an example from my own life so that it can really build up that understanding. So as some of you might know, I'm a speedrunner. I've been speedrunning for like over 3 years now, coming up to 4 years. And I speedrun the game Jack and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy. If you've listened to any of the last podcasts, then you would know that I've had a lot of issues with that community, but that's not the focus here. That's my speed game. I still speedrun it, and I'm still passionate about speedrunning. And one of the biggest things I wanted to make sure I did when I started speedrunning was not make the same mistake I made with a lot of previous hobbies of mine. So a lot of previous hobbies I've had, including I tried to get into like competitive Splatoon in the past. I just joined different gaming communities and things like that. I tried to be a part of many communities at some point in time. And a lot of the times things wouldn't work out the way I've hoped. And that would be really disappointing for me and discourage me and make me want to, stop engaging at all. Stop doing anything with other people because it just brings disappointment at the end of the day. I didn't want that to happen with speedrunning. Well, if you've listened to any of the other episodes, unfortunately, it did kind of happen, but my mindset is much different as a result, and that's what I'm grateful for. But anyway, back to the main topic here. I didn't want to start speedrunning and bring in envy, because past skills I've tried to build, I've always struggled with skill building, and it's something that I definitely want to cover in the future. It's a great topic. The way I have struggled with things, and I feel like a lot of people who have, who are autistic, have ADHD, or learning disabilities can relate to these struggles that I've had. But I've had a lot of struggles with learning, and it also happens to be my passion, like something I'm really passionate about and obsessive over, and something I just love to figure out and do. So being bad at doing what you love sucks. So I'm not terrible at it, but I wasn't the way I wanted to be. And that was always sitting in the back of my mind anytime I started any new skill. So for example, when I was, investigating the idea of being a competitive Splatoon player, I would often become envious of other players that just did not have the struggles that I had. Like they were able to just, pick up things and learn things and not be, too overwhelmed or distracted by call outs and all these things. And now I understand that a lot of these things that I was having issues with have a lot to do with, sensory processing issues that I may have, a whole array of things that I've learned as a result of being autistic, having ADHD, and other learning disabilities. But at the time, I didn't have that strong understanding of myself. So I was really quickly frustrated with myself when I wouldn't be able to perform at the level of these other competitive Splatoon players. And as a result, it made me feel like I had to stick around people that were not as motivated as me, because I thought that if I go anywhere else, I'm not going to be accepted. I'm not going to be enough. So I really wanted this group of people who were not really dedicated to doing competitive Splatoon, although they made it seem like that's what they wanted to do. I felt like I had to stay there and force them to push themselves like I wanted to be pushed. And it just was turned into a pretty toxic situation. And I feel like that envy, that desire to be able to learn and build those skills so easily, like I see other talented Splatoon players, that really bothered me. And that motivated me, and it kind of expressed itself in a toxic way. So the biggest point here is envy is triggered by social comparisons. A lot of the times we compare ourselves to other people, and typically people will say, "Oh, that's bad. You shouldn't ever do that." But I think life is more about balance. So you don't want to not ever compare, but you don't want to compare to the point where you start acting in toxic ways. So I was comparing to the point where I felt like I was being left behind. So I felt like I had to push, push, push. And a lot of the people around me just didn't have that motivation, or like they had other things going on in their lives or other interests. And it just ended up our personalities ended up clashing. And that's something that I look back on now and I'm like, wow, like I see why I acted that way. I was definitely struggling with my emotions at that point, but now I can see why I was struggling and understand that envy was basically the source of that panic that I was feeling. I would see other Splatoon players, see how easily they build skills and how easily they socialize and how easily they find people to play with who understand them. And I struggled with all those things. And I felt like I had to push the only people that I could socialize with, even though they weren't as motivated. And, that caused some conflicts. But coming back to speedrunning, I knew that when I got into this hobby, I didn't want to do that again. I didn't want to make those same mistakes. So I was honest with myself and realized that, envy was, a part of that. Um, Also, internalized ableism, like, feeling like I'm not good enough. A lot of those things were there as well, but there was also envy. So I knew that when I get into speedrunning, I'm not going to be the best speedrunner. I already knew that. I have way too many physical or, stress issues, like mental health issues. Like, I'm not going to be able to just grind hardcore every day and be the best. That's just not going to happen. But I can still really enjoy my process of growing as a speedrunner. I can still really, help others, encourage others, get them to try speedrunning, show them that it's possible to speedrun even if you're not going to be the best. It doesn't matter. You can still be an entertaining streamer. You can still, be really passionate about the game and know a lot about the game. You can help others, encourage others, support others in the community. I wanted to show that there's more than just being the best. And that was me trying to, show people that you don't have to let envy control you in a negative way. So yes, I'm aware that there are going to be people who are better than me at speedrunning Jak and Daxter, and there are going to be people who are much worse than me at speedrunning Jak and Daxter. And then at the same time, there's going to be people who are just kind of just like me, like we're at the same skill level. And I didn't want that to change how I treated anybody or how I felt about anybody or how I approached my own growth. And I made that a really big part of my stream. So like I was often talking about mentality and mental health. That's where that motivation and drive for those topics came from, realizing that I'd made mistakes in the past and I didn't want to make those mistakes again. So anytime I would feel envy for another speedrunner, like they're able to just pick this up really quickly, or they're really social, like the community just, respects this person instantly, and I've been trying to accomplish that and it's been taking me months or years. I would recognize that that's envy that I'm feeling and just take a step back and be like, okay, I don't want that to, have too much control over me. I can still do all the things I want to do and accomplish. It doesn't matter what that person has better than me or might have easier than me or, any of that stuff. That is not anything I have to hold against myself. I have no control over that in the reality of it. Like, there's always going to be somebody better or worse, and there's always going to be someone that you might feel envy towards. Like, you might want to be at that person's level, but that's just not realistic. You can't be at that person's level if you're not that person. And that's what has helped me, like just really getting passionate about my own journey, my own process, and really enjoying that process. Because then it doesn't really matter as much where someone else is in that in their journey, because like you see them as separate. You can look at their journey and learn things from it, or take things from it, which is why I was saying that, at a certain level you have to compare yourself to other people. If you want to improve, you have to make comparisons. You have to learn from others. So that's why I'm saying like it's more like a balance. So I still compared myself to other runners to see how they do things and how they're better at this and what helps them do this. And I would take it and try to translate it in a way that would work for me so I can make my own progress and still improve at speedrunning, but like really just make sure I'm having fun and not putting myself down because I'm not on the same path as somebody else. And that is basically how I see the balance of social comparisons. Like you want to compare, but you don't want to go overboard to the point where you start feeling worse and you're letting envy and, just sadness consume you because you're not like somebody else. Because that's just something that's never going to happen. And you have to just accept that. And you have to really just enjoy your own process in life. And that is going to be the biggest concept that you know, I mention the most in probably every PolyRamblez and to some extent because that's what I feel like is really the most important part of life. Just realizing that you only have one, you have your life, you have your process. Nobody else's matters as much as your own. You need to just focus on that. And then you have more time that you can really just put into yourself and your passions and your growth. And I feel like that is the way to get to a more fulfilling life. I feel more fulfilled the more I have done those things than I had ever felt when I was constantly comparing myself to others and putting myself down and feeling like I'm less than. Like, really just love your process. And then another example that I think is really great is the idea of being polyamorous. As some of you may or may not know, I'm polyamorous. And this means that I'm open to the idea of having multiple partners, but I'm very interested in more serious, emotionally connected partnerships. Um, that's something that's really important to me, but everyone has their own, opinions and perspectives and rules that they might want to follow. But for me, that's how it is. I care about having really close and deep connections with my partners. So before I accepted the idea of being polyamorous, there was a huge point where I used to, I felt like my desire to be polyamorous was rooted in envy. Like maybe I just wish I had this kind of partner and not what I have. Or maybe I just wish I could experience this, like this person, but that's not really something I need. That's just me being a bad person, me being envious. And I feel like as I matured and like really started to understand the polyamorous feelings that I've been feeling throughout my life, I realized that, that was not the case at all for me. Like for me, it's not about envy. It's just something I used to tell myself in the past because I thought that what I was feeling was just about envy. And now I see that, I just find value in all people. I don't like to put people above each other because of their skills or their like anything that, you know, they I just don't see one person better than another person. And maybe there's something very unique about this person that this person doesn't have, but that other person has something else very unique about them. And both of those, both of those people can be appreciated by me. It doesn't have to be a choice all the time. And that is like the core of my polyamorous, mindset. But obviously, I would love to have a topic of just polyamory and my mentality with that, but that's not the focus here. But this was just an example of another way that envy was, popping up into my mind throughout my life. All right, so we're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to jump into the definition of jealousy and some situations in my life where I feel like jealousy became like a really big part of my process. But yeah, catch y'all after the short break. All right, and we are back. Just a little break there. So now we're gonna focus on jealousy. We talked about envy a little bit. Now we're talking about jealousy, and then we're gonna kind of bring them back together at the end. Um, but yeah, the way I would define jealousy is being fiercely protective or vigilant of one's rights or possessions. It is about the threat of losing what you feel you already possess and own, regardless of whether or not that threat is real or perceived. And I think that definition is really important. Like, the important part of the definition is the idea of a threat and the idea of possession. So jealousy comes from feeling like you possess or own something, and feeling like that you own is being threatened by someone else. There's a threat or a chance that you can lose this, something that you value a lot or you think you value a lot. And if you feel in any way that there's somebody out there that can take that, or something that can take that, that is when jealousy forms. And I think that's very interesting, and it's very important to distinguish from envy, because envy is more about wishing you had something that someone else has, wishing you had the skill or the talent or the experience or the money that someone else has. But jealousy is about ownership. Jealousy is about thinking that I own this, and this person's going to try and threaten me and take this away from me. So I'm going to start feeling jealousy. It's why I think some people would say envy is like a 2-person emotion, and jealousy is more like a 3-person emotion. So like one person and another, they're in a relationship, and then a third person starts to come in and really make one of those people feel a threat for their partner and possession in their mind. So then that person will start to feel the jealousy. So it usually requires there being something you feel that you own, you feeling strongly about that possession, and then some threat that's coming in to potentially take that away from you. That's where jealousy comes into play. Now, I'm going to talk about being polyamorous again, but only to kind of give more of an idea behind jealousy. So I definitely have felt jealousy with partners in the past. And my first toxic partner that I briefly talked about in the first few episodes of PolyRamblez, you can go back and listen to those if you'd like. Outside of my long-term partner, Dan, was an extremely toxic person. And maybe I can dig deeper into that situation in the future, but it's not totally important to me right now. But, she used jealousy to her advantage to manipulate people to get what she wanted and needed to survive. So in hindsight, this was obvious that that's what was happening. But of course, at the time, I didn't realize that. But I blamed myself for the jealousy that I felt. And in reality, jealousy isn't something you can blame others on. So I can't blame her for the jealousy I felt. Although she was taking advantage of the jealousy and trying to encourage those emotions in me, At the end of the day, I'm feeling them because of how I feel. That's on me. So regardless of why it develops, it's all about you at the end of the day. So it's still something I had to work through, but I wanted to focus on the idea that feeling it all, you know, that doesn't mean that you failed polyamory. Because I think some people like to say, oh, you only want to be polyamorous because, you want to cheat and you don't want to have to be jealous and, you couldn't handle those emotions or you can't, handle just being committed to one person. Like all these things that people like to say about polyamorous people. And I'm just trying to say that most of that is just straight up BS because, you know, at the end of the day, we're humans. And like I said in the beginning, we all are going to feel a full array of emotions. So I'm feeling jealousy, but that's normal. There's nothing wrong with feeling jealousy. That doesn't mean that polyamory is a lie and you failed and you're not truly polyamorous. This is not how that works. Um, it's okay to feel those emotions if you're polyamorous. It's just something that you have to work through on your own and with your partner or partners. And I think that it's a collective thing. And that's kind of the idea of polyamory, where you're working together to make this work. And it doesn't invalidate it at all. So I think it's actually a very common struggle, to deal with maybe both jealousy and envy if you're polyamorous. These are just emotions at the end of the day, and it's okay to feel. But I think what is more important is learning how to work with those emotions in a non toxic way. So for me, that means confronting them. So why do I feel jealous in this situation? I don't own a person. They're their own person at the end of the day. They can do whatever they want with their lives. We might have a commitment, but at the end of the day, I don't own them. And it's unreasonable to think that I would be the only person to ever have feelings for this person. Like I'm polyamorous for a reason. So with this in mind, it makes it much easier for me to work through those feelings and remind myself that as long as everyone is respectful of one another and everyone's needs are being appropriately met, there is nothing to be jealous about. Of course, with that, toxic partner, that wasn't happening. Like not everyone's needs are being met and not everyone was being treated properly. But that's a completely different issue altogether. And that would need to be addressed on its own. But the feelings of jealousy, that is something that, as long as everything is going the way it should be going in the relationship, there's no real reason to be jealous. I had to confront those feelings and then ask myself, some questions about how I really understand polyamory and why this feeling of jealousy isn't something that I need to have controlling my life. I can feel it, and those feelings might come and go or be more intense sometimes more than others, but that's okay. It's okay that the feeling is there, but I don't want to use it as an excuse to be toxic, manipulative, abusive, or anything like that. It's how you act that matters. And when I confront them, you know, whether it's writing it down or journaling or, speaking to other people about it, speaking to your partners about it, whatever it may be, you need to work through those emotions so that you don't act in a negative way. But there's nothing wrong with feeling those emotions. Feeling them it's just normal. So working through these emotions. So part of that requires us to answer another question. So what drives them? Both of these emotions, envy, jealousy, they seem to be driven by the same underlying issues. So we have low self-esteem, low self-image, low self-confidence, and low self-respect. And you're probably thinking, what the hell are all of these? Like, people always say this crap all the time, and what does it even really mean? And I feel that, I do. So don't worry, I did the research for you. I am going to give you definitions that help me understand these concepts. And I do agree that any of these being low in a way is probably going to make jealousy and envy more likely to control you. And that's why I think, if you're going to be able to work through these emotions, this is the way you do it. You're not going to like attack the jealousy and envy emotions and try to cancel them out and make them just disappear. Like, no, that's not possible. But instead, what you're going to try to do is work on yourself internally. And as a result, it will make, when those emotions come through, like, they're not going to have much control over your actions and how you feel and how you treat others. They're going to be there, but they're not going to control you. And that's the goal at the end of the day. All right, so we're going to start with self-esteem. So self-esteem can be defined as confidence in one's own worth. And I feel like self-esteem is very attached to the idea of self-worth. So in my mind, I see them as very similar. You can agree or to disagree or whatever you want to do, but I'm going to go into why I feel that way. So, you can say self-esteem is kind of based off of, if you have strong self-esteem, what other people say about you won't affect you as much because your core belief in yourself is likable and you feel like you're a worthwhile person. You feel like you're worthy. And you're sure of that without, anyone telling you that or making you feel certain about that. You just have that certainty. You know that you're worthwhile and you're confident with that. I was reading something about self-esteem and they were trying to say that, we feel worthy if we achieve, if we live a certain lifestyle, or if we're good people. And I feel like self-esteem doesn't have to be about what you achieve in my mind. I see self-esteem being just a general understanding of your own worth as a person, just as you are. And that's why I'm saying it's highly attached to self-worth, because if you have self-worth and you believe in that self-worth, you have a decent self-esteem, because regardless of what anyone else around you feels, you see yourself as worthwhile, and it is that simple. So then we have self-image, and I think self-image is really interesting as well, which is something that I've definitely been working on in the past few years or so. So self-image is how you see yourself, the picture you have of how you look and how you behave. So it includes how you believe others see you as well. So in my mind, how I imagine self-image is when I was younger and I was, really struggling with depression and everything like that, I had a terrible self-image. Like, I never even wanted to look at myself in the mirror. I never wanted to think about how I see myself. And the idea of what others see about me was like something that I'd never wanted to think about. But as time has gone on, I've definitely learned to build up a more positive self-image. So now the idea of seeing myself in like, literally and like mentally, like just seeing myself and evaluating myself, the idea of that doesn't traumatize or scare me anymore. But I feel like, when you have a low self-image, it can really impact the way you interact with others in the world. Because it definitely had an impact on how I interacted with the world. So self-image, what kind of helps me with that one is image. You can see an image. That's how you see yourself and how you believe others see you as well. So then we have self-confidence, which is a feeling of trust in one's abilities, qualities, and judgment. So I feel like this one's kind of like self-esteem in the sense where it's really straightforward. If you're confident you trust in your abilities. You trust in your qualities, the qualities that make you who you are, the skills and abilities that make you who you are, your judgment. You're able to trust in that, and you're not second guessing yourself, you're not doubting yourself. You're not asking other people to help you all the time when you you feel like you can do things. You feel like you are able to rely on the skills and the abilities and the qualities that you have. I do want to correct though. I want to say that you can be confident and ask for help. But with something that you feel like you should be able to do, if you're second guessing yourself constantly, you don't feel confident. You don't have a lot of self confidence in your ability to do this thing. If you feel like you have to go and get help all the time instead of actually trusting in your ability to do something, this is something that you can do. You have the skills for it, you have the ability, but you're just not confident with that. You don't trust in it. And that would make you, go and get help or go and think you need other people to assist you. When you have that self-confidence, these things that you are capable of doing, you trust in that. You trust in your ability to do those things. And self-respect, I think this one is extremely important. And it almost like it ties all of them together, I guess, in a way. So I feel like it has nothing to do with how other people see you. Like, it's completely independent from how others view you. For any mistakes you may have made or any flaws you have, none of that matters. Self-respect is acceptance of ourselves just as we are, flaws and all. So that means that you just accept yourself for who you are. It's really that simple. You respect who you are. So, like, you can be realistic about who you are. Like, hey, I'm this, I'm kind of shy. And sometimes when I'm shy, I don't open up as much and I might say the wrong thing. But that's okay. I'm okay with that. I accept that. That's a part of who I am. I can work to improve some of those things, but at the end of the day, that's just who I am. And that's okay. And I respect that. The same way you might say you respect someone else, like you respect a celebrity or somebody, and like, oh yeah, I think that person's really dope. I respect that. Try to bring that inwards, and it's the same type of concept. And it's really just knowing how to accept the good and the bad and everything that makes you who you are. So I want to also jump into qualities that help or have helped me with these things, because this is kind of how I think about it. Like self-esteem, self-image, self-confidence, self-respect. All of these things together are what make you feel good about who you are. And if you don't feel good about who you are, you're more likely to struggle with envy and jealousy, because you feel like things, like when it comes to jealousy, you're always going to be afraid that somebody better than you, or somebody who has more self-esteem, better self-image, more self-confidence, someone who has all these things is going to come and take what you have. And you're always concerned about that because you don't believe in yourself. You don't have that self-esteem, the self-image, that self-confidence and self-respect that you need to have to feel certain and to feel stable and, with what you have in life. You feel like there's always a threat there and something might take that away. And I feel like the more you work on, those things, like feeling better about you, the less likely you are to always be so concerned and, slipping into jealousy and having that control you. It won't have as much of a hold on you if these things in your life are worked upon. But with envy, it's also like if you feel like your self-worth and, which also will impact your self-esteem, is attached to owning things or having certain things that other people have, then if you don't achieve those things, your self-esteem and your self-worth are always going to be, you know, really low and constantly getting destroyed. Or if you get something and you attach your self-worth to that and you lose it, however that may be, you will also feel destroyed. So I feel like it's really important, like with envy, to realize that these things, these qualities, they need to survive and thrive on their own, outside of things that you own and outside of things that don't really matter that much when it comes to, just learning to love who you are. And I think that's a big reason why all of these, play a big part in people learning to not let envy and jealousy completely control them and make them do things that are toxic or that they might regret, because you have these things already within you that are strong and stable and that you can rely on when you need them, when these emotions pop up. So the things that I feel like have really helped me work on all these things, and I don't say this in a way to make it seem like, oh, I have it all figured out and I know how to, avoid these. No. Basically, what I'm trying to say is these are things that I've been working on to try and help me have better control of these emotions in my life. And if you can benefit from these or learn something from this, that's great. So first, I would like to say self-validation. Now, I know you're like, another self thing? What the? But hold up. This is good. Self-validation. Basically, what I mean here is just learning to love yourself and validate yourself without requiring it from others outside of you. And I think that that's really important, but at the same time, I really want to make this point where I believe that everybody needs external validation to an extent. So what I mean by that is that, if we were just on the planet on our own, we would struggle. That would not do us very well. If we're around other people and we never get any constructive feedback or anything about, anything that we do, that would be detrimental. That would really hold us back in life. Just imagine that. Like, no one's allowed to give you any critique for anything or let you know about how, like, you could do this better. You could think about it this way. If you never get any external validation or information from others in some way that, lets you know that you're on the right path or lets you know that you need to adjust, then that's not great either. So I don't like when people try to say, oh, you need to have that self-validation. You can't ever get validation from others at all. Like, I don't believe that. I feel like it's more about a balance, like I said before, with other things. It's more about having a balance, and relying too heavily on external validation will only hurt you, because you will just be fully relying on others and external, like, things that you don't have control over to give you that validation. So just like if you were to lose a possession that you put your worth into, if you were to lose that external validation to some extent, you will feel just as lost. You will feel just as destroyed. But if you're putting a little bit of yourself, a little bit into, external validation, like you get advice from friends, you go to therapy, you do things like that, and you get that external validation and information to make sure you're living your life to the best way you can. But you're also really working on that internal sense of validation. So that, hey, I love myself. I know what I want. I feel good doing these actions. I don't need anybody else to tell me that I need to do these actions to feel good. I just feel good doing these things. My actions and my goals I'm giving myself the motivation for those things. I see the value in them. That is you getting that self or internal validation. And I feel like definitely you should be having way more of that going on than the external validation. You don't want to put too much to the external, but you also don't want to put too much to the internal, because then you might just be a dick. Because then you just think you know everything and you're not willing to listen to anybody else. So like there's bad sides to this, but I think having that balance is really, really important. And then acceptance of self fully. So this is basically like saying that self-respect is the most important one out of all of them. And you may agree or disagree, whatever you feel, but at the end of the day, you are who you are. And one of the things that I feel like I've really learned as time has gone on is that you can only change so much about yourself. Like you can't just be whatever you want to be. So like when people are like, oh, you can do whatever you want to do in life, you can be whatever you want to be. To an extent, they're not wrong, but to another extent, they're wrong. Because you can't just be whoever you want to be if that's not you. There's plenty of people out there who have tried to fake it until they make it, and it just doesn't work. Because to an extent, you can't change everything about yourself. Life is about learning yourself, learning who you are, learning what makes you you, and learning to accept that and work with it. But it's also being willing to, make changes and adjust things where necessary and realistic. So do you want to change your style? Do you want to start working out more? Do you want to be, happy with how you are right now? Just work on, just that self-love. No one can help you accomplish any of those things but you. You have to start to take the steps and build the habits and do what you need to do to be where you want to be. But at the same time, there are parts of yourself that just cannot be changed, and you have to learn to accept. And you have to learn to enjoy your unique process instead of putting yourself down until you get there. So I know, for instance, I have learning disabilities. None are officially diagnosed, but I'm pretty certain of some of them. I've struggled with these things for most of my life. And I used to put myself down because I have these struggles, and, there might be other people who don't have these struggles and they can just move through things so much easier. And, I would put myself down even though I'm making a lot of progress. I'm like, my progress just doesn't look like that person's, or, this feels so slow. I feel like I'm not really moving at a pace that I want to be moving at. But when you take that step back and you realize that, part of who I am is just, I have learning disabilities. That's just how it is. That's part of who I am, and I have to learn to accept that that's a part of who I am. I can't change that. There's nothing that I can do to make that go away. But I can still, take that into consideration and realize that the progress I'm making is good. That's something to be proud of. That's something to be happy about. My process, hey, it might look a little bit different than someone else who doesn't have learning disabilities, but, I have learning disabilities. That's just reality, and I can still enjoy my process, even though my process might look a little bit different from someone else's, So I feel like life is just a process, and there is absolutely nothing stopping you from loving yourself, no matter where you are in your process. So learning to see your process as unique and separate from other people's, but also learning to just enjoy that process, as you go through it. So there's going to be the up and downs. There's going to be times where you feel like giving up. There's going to be frustration. That's just life, that's just part of the process. But learning to appreciate every part for what they are is, the biggest part of self-acceptance in my mind. because you accept the things that you do have control over. You accept the things that you don't have control over. And you accept that life isn't fair and life is frustrating. And, you know, there's going to be good moments and there's going to be moments where you struggle and have those really difficult times. But that's just your life and your process. And you can still, you know, be grateful and appreciate what you're going through and the circumstances you're in. That's your unique story. That's your unique process. So, you know, you're not just the sum of your best efforts or the best of circumstances or the best of luck or any of that. You know, you're the sum of everything. Your mistakes, your flaws, your successes. Those moments where you think you're right and then you find out you're wrong. Those moments of doubt. Those moments where you feel jealousy and envy. You know, all of that is just part of your process. And in my mind, you should just learn to love that for what it is. And I think that makes life way more entertaining because, like, you're just going through life. And every day is an opportunity to build upon your unique process, your unique journey. And it is what it is. It's not always going to be great, but, you know, that's why it's so lovable. That's why it's so amazing. So then the third thing I think that's really important that it's something that took me a really long time to, you know, actually digest, consume, however you want to say it, is that you have to do. And I know that seems like, you know, like that just do it thing, right? All right. But I'll go into more detail than that. So it seems so simple, right? But oftentimes this is the hardest part of the process in my mind. So you have to start doing. So the more you do, the better you feel, the better you get at what you do. And then the more confidence you develop, the more self-respect you develop, the more self-esteem you develop. All these things will start to develop more the more you do because you're putting yourself out there. You're making yourself uncomfortable. You're building confidence. You're doing things. And you're going to get better at things. And you're going to really enjoy things and you're going to not enjoy other things. But at the same time, you're learning yourself. And you're learning to accept who you are and your growth in your own way. So same as above, you need to make sure you actually enjoy the full process of this. So like you're going to be doing things and you're going to frick up and you're going to mess up and you're going to get angry and frustrated and you're going to struggle. But you always want to try to bring yourself back to realizing that this is a process. And I need to learn to enjoy the full process because those moments of struggle are what make it worth it. What makes your growth worth it. And that's where I feel like that true self-respect, self-validation, self-esteem, all that stuff really develop because you're doing things, you're putting yourself out there, you're making yourself uncomfortable, you're challenging yourself, and you're growing every day you do that. And you have no choice but to build up confidence and build up these things. It will just start to happen naturally because you're out there, you're living. And obviously, you might have to put some conscious effort into some categories. Like maybe your self-confidence is going up, but your self-image is still kind of lacking. And you might have to put a little bit of extra effort into that. You know, that's totally okay. But I definitely feel like the more you do, the better these things will get. But you just have to make sure that you're doing the right things. Doing the right things is the hard part. So like for me, doing was starting to stream. Like that really helped me. Like I started to build a lot of self-confidence, a lot of self-acceptance just from doing that. You know, for someone else, it might be, you know, reading more or, you know, starting up a new hobby or, you know, journaling more. Whatever it is that you decide, that's on you. And you have to figure out what it is that you need to do that will benefit you the most. But as long as you're doing, you're going to be making progress in some way. Either you're going to be figuring out that, hey, this is not the direction I need to go in, or hey, this is the direction I need to go in, but I need to adjust it a little bit. If you're doing, you will learn and you will figure it out. It's all just a part of the process. Like, failing is a part of it. Succeeding is a part of it. Being confused as hell is a part of it. And there's nothing wrong with failure. There's nothing wrong with doubt. There's nothing wrong with confusion. All these things eventually lead to growth if you continue doing. And I feel like as you do all this, you will eventually notice that the way you feel about yourself improves. You know, you don't have time to worry so much about what others have that you don't. Or you think that, you know, what you have is less than others. You just don't worry about that as much. You start to focus more on just yourself and your own process, or your love for your process. You know, you start to appreciate your journey. You realize that at the end of the day, this is your life, and you, as far as we know, this is the only life you have. So your process is all that matters at the end of the day. You shouldn't be living for somebody else, because there's no way that you can do for them what you can do for yourself. So it becomes something that motivates you daily. It becomes who you are. And then hopefully at that point, you won't worry so much. And when you worry less, it definitely shows, because I feel like I worry a lot less than I used to. And I feel like that shows constantly with the way I act and the way I behave and the way I move through life. And I'm hoping that as I continue to work on these things, it will show even more. So we're just going to take a quick little break before I share some key ideas before we end. And I also would like to share some resources. So I definitely plan to link some resources on things that I was reading when I was thinking up my ideas and all this stuff as sources. So I would definitely share that. But yeah, we're just going to take a quick break and be right back. All right, we're back, and we're going to end it with some key ideas. So, overall, if I were to summarize what I talked about today, I would say that we should not fear our emotions. And we definitely shouldn't tell ourselves that some emotions are bad and others are good. I don't think that's helpful, and it's just a waste of time, because at the end of the day, we're always going to feel these emotions. We're going to feel the full array of emotions no matter what, because we're human. And we're allowed to feel all of our emotions. You know, there's no perfect human, so might as well stop wasting your time trying to be one. And just let yourself feel and focus on what matters. And what matters is how those feelings make you act. What you do with those feelings. You know, when you mess up, you apologize, you take accountability, but you don't punish yourself for feeling things. Our feelings help us better understand one another, and they especially help us to better understand ourselves. And to me, that is the goal in life, like learning to better understand yourself and make the best out of your process. Find the process that works for you and make the best of it. And keep improving upon it every day. That's literally what I do every day. And that's what I live for. So that's how I envision life. And I hope that, talking about these things, breaking down these words and these concepts and these definitions maybe can help you or encourage you to, look into how you can make some changes in your life or how you think about things. Or if you have anything to share, feel free to share it. I'm always willing to hear anything anybody has to share, any ideas that people got from listening. Feel free to do that. But that's going to be it from me. Thank you so much for listening. And we're going to close off with the poly theme. Thank you to Practice for making it.